Hi, everybody. Sorry for the literally at 11:57, the internet went out at the temple. Fortunately, I have a cell phone, the hotspot, and that's how we're going to make this happen. So, but it's great to see everybody joining us for this, our final week of our Pride Month Lunch and Learn. So just give me a second to kind of get everything organized as I'm scrambling to get everything in place. But the fact that you can see me, if you can hear me, touch your nose. Good listening. Good listening. Thanks, everybody. Means that this is working. And Aileen just came in and told me that I can try the internet. I'm not even going to try it. We're going with the phone. It seems to be working.
It is working now, Rabbi. It was down for a little bit, but it's back up. You
know what, Mike? That tells me I should do this. I'm going to make you a co-host just in case.
Okay.
And that way you can offer whatever support we need to get to move forward. So I am, let's see, how am I connected? I'm connected locally. Okay. I think I'm on the internet anyway. All right. Hi, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Happy almost the end of Pride Month. Not that we're happy that Pride Month is over, but just that we are celebrating what has been, I think, a really powerful and for the most part wonderful, although not entirely wonderful, month of Pride for the Temple Bethel community and for the Palm Beach County community and for the South Florida Pride community. It has been certainly an interesting month to say the least. I do want to make note of, as I look around the Zoom screen, we have mostly members of Temple Bethel with us, but we do have a member of the Florida legislature here as well. Emily Schlossberg, thank you so much for joining us. Emily is representative for some of us up in Tallahassee, so we're so glad that you have joined our conversation today. And please, we want to welcome you, and if I can, for your benefits, and also as a way to sort of frame the conversation today, give a brief recap as to what we've done here at Temple Bethel to celebrate the month of Pride in the year 2021. And I'm actually go all the way back to last year. So for those of you who were with us last year, you remember that we marked Pride as we were really just in the beginnings of what we thought was the end of a pandemic. Well, it's summer, it'll be fine, it'll clear out, we'll go back to school, no big deal. And of course, we were wrong about all of that. But we celebrated Pride with our Pride Shabbat service last year. And many of you participated in leading readings and offering reflections as we led our service from some of the works in Mishkan Ga'ava, our movement's collection of celebration of LGBTQ Jewish life. And that was an iteration, and we have our LGBTQ plus task force who is a part of this call today and who was a part of that planning process. And as we were getting ready for Pride Month this year, we said, well, now that we are coming out of Zoom, but we're also still in Zoom land, what can we do to have a mix of both? And so during this month, we've had a variety of different ways that we have celebrated Pride. One was our Pride service a week and a half ago, which I thought was just phenomenal. And to hear from Matt Sprinzen and his story of growing up in his transition, I'll share that there was, we wanted to have a special focus this year on the trans community and the trans experience. As an eye-opener, I will say that I had a conversation. I was visiting some family this weekend up in Chicago, and my cousin, I don't know if he did it on purpose, but said to me sort of offhandedly that he didn't quite understand the whole idea of preferred pronouns, which led to a wonderful conversation of what that means. And he was like, oh, that sounds good. Which was, again, that type of outreach that we are doing as a community is really, really important. So that was on the 18th. We participated in 2 community Pride events. The first was the Delray Pride Marketplace up in Lake Worth Beach, the first weekend of the month. We had a table there, and many of you were able to participate. That was a great experience for the county. And then many of us who were on the call today were down together in Wilton Manors a few weeks ago for what was a phenomenal afternoon of the Pride events. And then unfortunately, the tragedy that befell the event and the tragic car accident that happened as we were getting ready to get started certainly put put a damper on the evening, and we hold the victims of that event, and frankly, the person responsible, we hold them all in our hearts in this moment, knowing that they're dealing with the pain of that event and will continue to go forward. For those of you who haven't had a chance to be by our Schaefer Family Campus on 4th Avenue or our Beck Family Campus at Yamato on 441, you will see the installation that our temple's Fiber Arts Circle installed. Fiber Arts Circle, by the way, is the fancy way of saying knitting and crocheting and other things done with string and yarn. And they installed what they call a yarn bombing on some of the trees on our campus with the message of love in a variety of colors on both of those campuses that can be seen as you come into the building, for those going to the building. And then we've had this is now our 5th Lunch and Learn, where we've explored a variety of ideas around the LGBTQ plus community. We had Rabbi Michael Buckiel teach us on the first week some resources from Keshet, which is a wonderful organization supporting the LGBTQ plus community within the Jewish community. We had a second teaching the second week. We heard from Equality Florida. Last week, Robin Eisenberg and I thought had a wonderful conversation about the history of the reform movements and LGBTQ community. And here we are today. And I have a couple of goals for today, but not a particular plan. Because my goals are these. My goals are to do a little bit of reflecting on what has this Pride Month been for our temple and for our community. And I would love to hear both from members of our task force and also from the general members of our community who are here to think about, what was it like as someone who was gay or lesbian or transgender, bisexual, whatever you might be? What has it been like for your community to celebrate Pride? And also for those of us who are in the cis-het community and consider ourselves to be allies, how has Pride been for us this year? And then at the end, I would love to do some brainstorming, because one of the questions that I think we're always going to be asking ourselves is, where do we go from here? What does Pride look like going forward? Maybe during the month of June next year, maybe during other points along the way in next year's calendar. I'm not sure if some of the community events are going to be in June. I think we learned that doing outdoor community events in South Florida in June, not always the best time to do things. And I know that some of those events have taken place at different times along the calendar in past years, and June happened to be the time to do it this year because that's when things really began to open up. And of course, June, as being the month where we remember the events of Stonewall, it's certainly a reason to do Pride events, but not the only time of the year to do them. But also to talk about what can we be doing around LGBTQ allyship and Pride and support that isn't linked to a particular time of the year, but as it builds into our culture. And so I'm going to begin with the question, and I am going to do a little bit of sequestration, meaning asking members of our task force to speak at certain times, and then allies. So my question is first to those members who have really helped build Pride Month this year, the members of our task force. What are your reflections? How has this month been for you individually, and particularly as members of Temple Beth El and what we've done? So Philip or Robin or Mike or Tracy or Summer, not to put you on the spot, but you have contributed so much to making this happen. And so if you have what you want to share with the group, now would be a great time to go ahead and unmute yourself or raise your hand or jump right in. Philip, go ahead.
I thought it was just wonderful, and I'm so happy to be part of Bethel for general reasons, but specifically for this, it was just terrific to have such a nice presence, and how many of us there were in Fort Lauderdale, even though we didn't get to march, but that there were so many ladies from my Howard Ross, great women, and one of them was 93, and then she came out in the heat and weathered it very well. It would have walked if we had been able to walk. But it's just fantastic, and I think it says a lot about who the temple is and who our leaders are, and I think it was wonderful for me, and I wish we would have been able to march, but we were there, and I posted on Facebook our group with the banner so that my friends who were at the parade but didn't see anything could enjoy and see what we were about. So
was there, I mean, it sounds like your answer is going to be the Pride event down in Wilton Manor, Philip, but was there a particular if it wasn't that, was there a particular event during the month or a time during the month that you are going to say was your favorite, and why do you feel that way?
Well, it probably was the parade. I mean, the fair was lovely, but it was another one of those fairs. Those fairs are always, selling burnt meat and candles. It's always kind of how all those kind of things are, and which was lovely. I'm glad we were there. But as far as community visibility, that was being in the Wilson Manor, of course, would have been better if we'd been able to, but we weren't. But it's still, I posted it. I have 4,000, 5,000 friends on Facebook, but we were there, and that was a good thing just in itself,
Fantastic. Thank you. Other voices, Stephen.
I think from being involved in the task force, but not being able to make those first two meetings, when I saw the initial Pride email that came out from the temple, I kind of got excited. I think Rabbi Greg and Michael, I just reached out right when I saw it. The fact that only 2 meetings were done and the whole month was planned, I think was really, really exciting. And a mix of in-person events, Zoom events, and just showing the temple really cared. I worked with Mike and the rabbi at the Lake Worth Fair for about an hour and a half. And that was, people from all over South Florida, from like Jupiter down to, Aventura stopping by, because there's really not that many congregations that they're this open. To Philip's point about, right before, unfortunately, everything happened, we had almost 30 of us that were going to march at that parade. And that was kind of really, really exciting. So, as far as, what the temple did, it was amazing. And hopefully we can continue that, not just in June, but throughout the year. I guess, quick question, Rabbi, is the yarn, the ball of yarn on the both campuses, are they going to stay on, or are they going off tomorrow, or like they're going to keep them on?
I don't think we have a disinstallation plan just yet. I don't think it's going to stay on permanently. I will suggest from my own experience that, having been out in the South Florida sun and humidity and rain and wind, that the lifespan of the yarn is beginning to show. And so I'm going to reach out to, when exactly it's going to be decommissioned, I don't think has been planned just yet. But I think I'm going to read between the lines for a second and say that you're asking, like, what would it look like for something to stay up a little bit longer than that? And how do we, I'm wondering, how do we continue to project who we are as a community in a more permanent way? And I would suggest that fiber arts is maybe not the best medium for that, but we should explore a better medium than yarn to have some of that imagery. Stephen, were you thinking about something else?
Well, the last comment would be something probably for the end of the conversation, and it's something that I'd spoken to you about and Mike about, moving forward as a community. And again, maybe it's my business because I'm in the promotional business, but the decision about 2 stickers, having an ally sticker and a regular sticker. And I get the both perspectives of it, where if you're wearing ally sticker, oh, I'm straight, thank God I'm not gay, or you're thinking you're a lesbian or bisexual or gay. But it's something small as that is, do we need to separate ourselves? And I think also one of the topics you brought up to me, Rabbi, was, when one of the people came up to you, Brian Park, and said, what are you really doing? It's like, well, here we can tell you what we're doing, but are we really hitting that community? So between that point and the sticker point, these are topics that we could potentially continue on.
Absolutely. Let's save that for the end of the conversation today. Absolutely. Mike, go ahead.
So, without turning this into a therapy session,
okay,
I want to start out by saying, as a gay man who came out a little bit later in life, even to myself, partially because I worked with kids for most of my career and was very anxious about what people would say or think. Being part of a temple community now and the wider community down here, where I don't have to worry about, is wonderfully refreshing. My first experience through the temple was up in New York with a temple in Great Neck that has, for many, many years, had what they call the Gay and Lesbian Inclusion Committee, GLIC. And that term always bothered me. It was like almost like going out of their way to include, which just didn't feel the way it should be. It should be more normal. I hate using that word, but it should be more natural, not an extra effort. So when I then got involved at my temple, my next temple on Long Island, and we also had a committee, we changed the name to Kulanu, meaning, and I always remember exactly what it means in Hebrew, but like welcoming, or all of us.
All of us. It's all of us. Yeah.
Felt so much more natural to me. And now here at Bethel, I absolutely adore Bethel Pride. It's something, it means so much to be part of a community that is so proud and loving and supportive and inclusive without going out of the way to include. It's just, it's natural. The events I thought were fantastic. I'm sorry I wasn't able to participate in the lunch and learns because obviously I'm at work. But just being at the Lake Worth event, which was the first one, and I don't know how long has it been, Robin, since Bethel was involved in something like that. I suspect
a long time.
A long time. And I think if ever, and I think Stephen pointed out, you know, people were really impressed. I think they couldn't believe that there was a temple in their backyard, or, you know, reasonably close, that was there and participated and just expressed the openness and the welcomingness. And then, of course, the parade. I have to say, for the first time in my life, even though I say I came out later in life, it's still 25 years. And living in New York, I never went to a pride parade or event. I was just too scared, I guess. My own internal homophobia or whatever it was. It felt so great to be there with my temple, with my community. And I've obviously very sad that we weren't able to march, and look forward to that in the future. So I'm rambling and I want to give others an opportunity to talk, but I think we all have something to be incredibly proud of, whether we are part of the LGBTQ plus community or the allies or just all TBE members. It's an amazing place and I love all of you. So thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Oh, Robin, go.
That's okay, Tracy.
I was just going to say, I think that we've, that Bethel has internally done this so well for so long, but the external showing up this year, the outfacing involvement and connection and community engagement that we did was really special. And I think even more so juxtaposed after a year or so of being inside, it was even more powerful to get out there and be out in the community together. And so I just appreciate that a lot.
Thanks, Tracy.
So I was going to say something similar to that, Tracy. Surprise, surprise. You know, Bethel, I've said this to the task force, that Bethel was always a welcoming place for me as a lesbian, and always was accepting of Andy as a partner and as a member of the congregation. But I think that we took it to the next step by participating in the community events this year. So I think that it set a very good launching pad for what will be in the future. And one other comment, for those of you who don't know, Emily Slossberg is a TBE alumni. If you didn't know that, she started in preschool, and so nice to see your face, Emily.
Nice to see you too, Robin. And it's so good to see everybody. Yeah, and I was Banat Mitzvah at Temple Bethel, and I am an alumni, and it is so good to see what you guys are doing, and it's so wonderful to hear everything that you're doing, and I'm actively listening, and it is really refreshing to have this Jewish community together with Temple Bethel. Just I'm really, really enjoying the fact that you've taken a lot of good steps to celebrate Pride Month. So I'm really enjoying and just listening to what everyone is saying today. So thank you for that. And thank you for inviting me, Rabbi.
You're welcome. Can I put you on the spot for a second since you're here?
Sure.
So we know, those of us that have been following, that some of the actions of the legislature and the governor have, well, they wouldn't be so welcome around this conversation, let's put it that way. And so, my question for you is, as someone who went out of her way to be in this conversation with us today and comes from our community, what does the future look like, right, in the state of Florida, right? What is it that we can do to help shape what that future looks like in partnership with you? And I'm hoping more colleagues than we realize up in Tallahassee to work towards the type of world and type of welcoming that we wish for.
And it's so different from being here, because in the legislature, we have 120 members and only 40 some members, depending on which cycle we're going through, are Democrats. And I'm not going to make this political, but those that are, we've had some very, very disheartening bills. We just passed legislation that forbids transgender youth from participating in sports, and also requires them to, if they're currently participating, to not participate next semester. This is it started off too, and the way that the language of the bill started off, it would have required these students to take these invasive exams to determine their biology at a certain point, and they did take that part out and changed it to their birth certificates. But this was it, and the governor has recently just signed this legislation. But
on the first day of Pride Month, I might
on the first day of Pride
yeah.
Month, and not only that, and he also vetoed dollars for mental health funding for Pulse survivors. I mean, in this month, in Pride Month. So the state itself is going in the wrong direction. I mean, it's very difficult to be a legislator in this current the way it's set up. There's only 40 some of us that are fighting against some of these measures. Obviously on the federal level, things are taking a totally different, going, in the right direction. We have Biden and we have his cabinet and LGBTQ friendly. But this is, it is very difficult being a legislator right now. And the way things are going in the state of Florida is definitely in the wrong direction. I guess we'll see how that bill plays out. I'm sure there's going to be challenges to it. But it really is difficult. I mean, we do have a few of our members who stand up and really fight back against these measures and very strongly. And so, there was compromise. They did make amendments onto the bill going, from chamber to chamber. But, this bill, it should have been vetoed, in Pride Month. That's really that would have been the right thing for the governor to do, is veto the bill. But that's not what happened. And so I guess next section, we could possibly expect to see maybe a repealer bill filed or something to that effect. But yeah, it's definitely a difficult environment in Tallahassee.
Has there been any reaction to the announcement yesterday from the state of California that they are going to be suspending official business travel to Florida and 4 other states because of bills that were passed like that one? It may be too soon for there to have been a reaction to really come to be yet.
Yeah, we haven't heard any reaction yet. I'm hoping either it'll get struck down or we'll somehow be able to file a repealer bill next session.
And there must be people across the aisle that we could work with on this. I mean, I know you as a politician, as a Democrat, you have every right to bring to this the fullness of yourself and your partisan perspective. That's fair. As a synagogue, we're obviously nonpartisan. And we want allies no matter where they are. And so my question is, who are there allies that you're aware of, and you don't need to name names if it's not coming right now, where on this particular issue, there may be Republicans that we think we should be engaging with, maybe even ones who are local to our community that would be more likely to have voted against that bill had we done a better job asking them to, than as opposed to what I hate to do is presume, because they're Republican, they're going to vote that way, or because they're a Democrat, they're going to vote that way. do you think that there's soft ground across the aisle to do some work on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. A lot of times, Republican or those in power, the Republican Party, they're given committee assignments like committee chair or vice chair, or they get bills that are going through it. And so I think the fear is sometimes that if they don't vote with leadership, they don't vote the way that they're told to vote, they're going to lose that position as chair, or their bill may not go through. But then again, some of them will stand up for what is right. And so we could, I guess I could work on identifying and talking to some of my colleagues across the aisle to see who would agree to, certain policies.
And I think as a synagogue, that's a place where I think we can certainly enter the conversation. We have a geographic reach because of where our membership lives, that we are represented both in Tallahassee and in Washington by a variety of members of the Florida House and Senate and the US House and Senate. And so that's a place where I feel like we could use our, we have a position and we have multiple people that we could take that to. And I think that one of the things that I'm looking back on this past year, this particular bill is one of several where I feel like, frankly, we didn't do enough work working with, well, I'll name it, Representative Caruso, right? We didn't do enough work talking with him about why, as his constituents, as some of us are, we could have found a place to work together. And as I think about where we can do going forward, speaking about pride, that's an area where I would love to see us come together and have those difficult conversations. It's easy to have a conversation with you, Emily, about why this matters. It's harder than on the other side, but that's actually where the really important work is. And that's a goal that I'm setting for myself and I'm set for our community, is to have some of those harder conversations as we go forward.
It can't hurt. And I think that's actually a really good idea to have those conversations with Representative Caruso and others that are.
Yeah. As we're getting close to the bottom of the hour, I want to offer the opportunity for the community in general. Any other reflections about what this month has been for us, what you've learned about the community, what you've learned about the LGBTQ community, what you learned about yourself during this past month, before we turn the conversation to look a little more forward, looking at where we go from here. So I'm looking at the screens who haven't. Judith, I saw your hand go up first. Judy, go ahead. Hang on, Judy. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself first, though. Not yet. Try the microphone, not the camera button. You keep pushing the button for the camera. Push the other one for the microphone. Not yet. Judy, I'm going to move on to someone else. And when you get your microphone up and going, I'll be sure to call on you right away. Other thoughts, other reflections about what this month? Jeff, go ahead, please.
I unmuted.
Oh, Judy, go ahead. Sorry, Jeff, you're going to wait.
I have a question.
Sure.
The screen I'm looking at, is this all the people attending this meeting right now?
There are 11 of us, and I think everyone's camera is on. Yeah.
Okay.
There may be people who are watching on the live stream who are not in the Zoom, but this is being live streamed right now as well. And they're not participating actively. But if you were there, we're so happy you're watching wherever you might be.
Okay. My comment was, as I look at the people that are here, I was really very surprised at how few congregants who aren't directly involved with the task force. I mean, 1,500 families, come on, I was absolutely shocked that there wasn't more general support for a learning. It's lunch and learn, it's a learning experience. That's my comment.
That's fair. That's fair.
That's it.
That's it. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing. As we say, we've heard. Shamana, we have heard. Jeff, go ahead. What were you going to say?
So I'm going to start with a thank you first to you, Rabbi Greg. As Robin has said, that Bethel has been very welcoming and friendly to the LGBTQ community for many, many years, but there's a reason we're all here. and your constant leadership in everything that is social justice is amazing. And we're all grateful for that. So thank you. Thank you to the task force members. So I first heard about this task force actually a little over a year ago when I met Stephen for the first time, and he mentioned he was on it. I had never, for those of you who don't know, I'm a board member at Bethel, and I was taking part in a leadership program that Stephen was taking part in, and he mentioned that that he was part of this task force and that he's hoping that Bethel would do more. And my ear kind of just perked up. And the next thing I heard, we then went into COVID right after that. And then the next thing I heard about it was just when I signed on to services, not even realizing what service it was. And there were all of you, most of who I've been close friends with for many years, who were on my screen for Pride Shabbat last year. And then didn't really hear of anything. Of course, we've had COVID until this year. So I'm very grateful as somebody who, as a heterosexual man who's always had interest in everything equality, but very much for the Pride community, LGBTQ community, not really knowing what to do. I'm not a marcher. I've never really known, what can I do? So this month gave me something to do. So I'm grateful for that. I think back to what Stephen said a year and a half ago when I met him, what more can we do? And what you said, Greg, here moving forward, what more can we do? As a person who's blessed with a leadership position at Bethel, one of the things I'd mentioned a couple weeks ago, before I say that, just real quickly, Greg, I think originally in talking about racial equity mentioned a month ago or so, whenever it was, about that we need to start with education, which I'm a believer in. So this has been a good education. I learned some things last week from what Robin and you said about our movement, which was wonderful, from Robin, a different Robin the week before, some things that I didn't know. So that education is great. And the last thing I would just say is, as somebody who's been blessed with a leadership position at Bethel, I am there as an ally to support in any way. Obviously, it's not like this task force needs a board member to get things done. You've gotten an incredible amount done in the last year, but support is always good with those who hold leadership positions. And by the way, I'm one of many. It's not like if you went to the board and asked anybody if they support this task force, that's the kind of board we are, that's the kind of temple we are. But I think active participation is important as well. So thank you all.
Thanks, Jeff. We may be coming back to you in your role as VP of Leadership and Governance, because I think that there's an overlap, I think, in my mind, as we talk more about where the work that the task force is going to push us to go, I think does very quickly bleed into your purview as VP of Leadership and Governance, as you think about the way the synagogue operates.
And kind of tied into what Judy said before.
Yeah. Any other reflections on the month that was? I have a thing that I want to share for transition, but anything more on the month that was? Summer, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for doing the lunch and learns. I mean, I think this is, we're all tired of Zoom. It's been a long pandemic, but I think a lot of people in Boca are like me and not around in the summer. And so this was, a nice way for me to be able to participate. And especially as a newer member and a member of the queer community, it was, just a nice way to be able to stay involved. And I appreciate it.
Thank you. The thing you just said, Summer, is something that I've been carrying, which is, for those of us who live in Florida, June is an inopportune month. And we've defaulted to marking and celebrating Pride at some point during or throughout the month of June in the years, at least that I've been here, that we have marked Pride. But I think even that should be up for conversation for some of the reasons that we've just alluded to. I mean, if we take the lead from what has gone on in the past in Wilton Manors with the Stonewall Parade there, or what has gone in the past with Palm Beach Pride, and I don't know their calendar for 2022 yet, but I know that these events that we participated this year during the month of June have not always been in the month of June. They were in the month of June this year because that was the first opportunity to do them, having been in our homes for the last year and a half or so. But maybe one thing that comes out of what we learned this year is that actually we want to mark Pride at a different month, right? And we should certainly do it in concert with those other community events so that participation in those community events become part of what we do. But if we decide that we're going to mark Pride in March, because that's when folks are around, there's a lot to be gained. There's a lot to be gained from that. Robin, you mentioned the next step, and that's where I want to really spend our time together. And I'm sort of happy to have this conversation in kind of a public facing way. But I want to make it somewhat of a confession first. I want to share what I'm holding is in terms of what I think some of the tension is in the work that we're doing. This is not, by the way, bad tension. It's good, productive tension, but it's what are the things that I think we should be cognizant of. And Stephen, I think that the reflection about the 2 stickers speaks to this a little bit. And for those of you who are not aware what Stephen's talking about, when we had stickers made up, I still have them. We had stickers made up that people were invited to put on. We had them at the Pride event in Lake Worth. We had them for people to wear. Mike is showing an example of one of them that we had made up, and we had them for the various events and for Shabbat and all of that. And one said celebrate Pride, and one said, I think I'm an ally. And I think that there is a real and valuable thing to think about, which is as we're doing work around Pride, which includes an element of allyship for those of us in the cishet community. By the way, cishet means cisgendered and heterosexual, for those who are not familiar with that phrase. I feel this personally as a cisgendered heterosexual man and a rabbi and a person who is trying to both lead and be supportive in the role that I sit as a rabbi in the synagogue. Mike, you used the word part several times in what you said. A part of, apart from. And to me, that I think is the tension that I'm sitting with most deeply in our community, which is that we don't want the work of the LGBTQ task force to be apart from what the synagogue does. We want it to be a part of what the synagogue does. But even that, to me, there's a challenge of being a part of and not being apart from all at the same time, right? Which means that I think we're going to end up doing a couple of things at the same time. Part of this is, and I'll use another word Mike you don't want to use, normal, right? It's that sense of normalization, right? The sense of trying to create a community where that there are folks who are gay or straight or cis or trans, whatever your identity or identities might be, that all of it is normal and welcome. And to be normal and welcome means that no one should feel prompt to be out of their way, go out of their way. It should just be a thing that happens and everyone feels comfortable and welcomed and included and celebrated and all that kind of stuff. But to build that culture takes a lot of intentional action. It takes a lot of going out of your way. It takes a lot of creating experiences that are apart from the norm, right? Whether that's having a Pride Shabbat or marking a month as Pride Month, or having learning sessions directly devoted to considering issues of the LGBTQ community, or going out of our way to drive to Lake Worth Beach on a Saturday morning, or going out of our way to drive down to Wilton Manors on a Saturday night. Those are all things that take effort. The world that we're trying to create, the community that we're trying to create, is not going to happen all by itself. It's going to have to be done with intentionality. And that means people putting effort and saying, no, we're going to do this differently from now on. And it feels weird to do things different with the end goal of not having to do things different anymore. But that's sort of the building of the world that we're trying to do here. And so, Stephen, to speak to the question of the stickers, I hear you, right? On the one hand, yes, celebrating Pride is on the one hand good enough for everybody, and it should be. I would say for myself, I could see why, because I feel it in my own self. I don't know why it is that I would be fearful of being misidentified as someone who was queer in a particular space. Because for me, and I feel that, right? It's not because I feel like there's anything wrong. It's not where it is at all. It's just that I don't want anyone to not understand who I am and to have any missed expectations about me. And so as someone who is cis and straight, going the way to share myself as an ally signals something about who I am, so that no one presumes in a pride. Listen, maybe this is it. That when I'm in a pride space, I think the presumption for a lot of folks is the majority of people who are there are gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual, queer, whatever it might be. And that's supposed to be a space of safety and comfort. And as a cisgendered heterosexual white guy, I may not be the safest person to a lot of people in those spaces because of the identities that I carry. And so I'm trying to be cognizant of that and communicate that I'm trying my best to be a safe person. Maybe I'm overthinking it. I don't know. But I think that that's where the allyship sticker originates from, if you sort of dig down into it. We should live in a world where everyone's an ally. We should live in a world where no one has to be identified or feels the need to want to identify themselves in that way. And I think it's something that we're going to continue to chew on for a long time. That's where I am on that piece. I see some hands are shooting up on that particular issue, and so I would love to engage. Judy, if we can get your microphone on, you're happy to go first. And then I saw Mike's hand as well. Go ahead, Judy.
Okay. What you're saying, Rabbi, reflects on what Rabbi Micah said the very first week about adjectives and labels.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I agree with that. I agree with everything you're saying, but we've just come out of a very unusual year. So everything you're suggesting to build on, I agree with. But I think the reason things may be slow starting was because where we've been.
Yeah. Mike, what did you want to add to that?
I have a few things. First, by the way, the Palm Beach Pride Marketplace, the one we went to in Lake Worth, is scheduled for March of 22, which is when they have historically had it, and they moved it to June because of COVID. So that's something that I think we should aim for if everyone is in agreement and we have the temple support. I think we do, to do again. Second, and I had this conversation privately with Steve as well, I feel somewhat responsible for the 2 stickers. And just so other people know both sides are here, and I totally get what Steve has raised. To me, it felt like honesty versus dishonesty. I think there is a place for the ally sticker for the world to see, to express, to go out of your way to show that we have our allies. And part of it is what you expressed, Rabbi, about not wanting that some may be uncomfortable wearing, it shouldn't be, but it is reality, might be uncomfortable wearing a pride sticker for perhaps being misidentified. And at the same time, as a gay man who finally feels comfortable being out and proud, didn't want to wear an ally sticker because that doesn't say what I am. So I don't know the answer to that issue, but that was the reasoning behind it, right or wrong. And the last thing that I want to say on this whole topic and things that we've discussed moving forward, and Jeff made reference to education, and I would love to see the temple offer some type of, whether it's a GSA or a safe space for the kids in our religious school. Maybe it comes from having worked with kids for a lot of years. Maybe it's a difference generationally. I am absolutely in awe of young people who can be themselves, because I know I couldn't be. So to educate the kids, we have an opportunity to reach these kids, not at the ELC per se, but there's an opportunity there too. But certainly for the religious school and high school kids to work towards this common goal of equality and acceptance and normalcy, that it just is. It doesn't matter what one is. We all are a part of this world of humanity. So that's something I would like to challenge the task force with and the temple with moving forward, is how to create that, how to, make that an opportunity for our kids.
Summer, I saw your hand first, and then Stephen.
Yeah, I just want to say, going on the kid thing, Equality First has a kids program in all the public schools. And I did talk to Renee about that. And he said they would probably work with the synagogue to develop something like that, like a gay straight alliance for kids. They also have the Safe and Healthy Kids program that they do in schools. So I don't know. I do think that would be a great thing for just going forward to look into.
Yeah. Equality First or Equality Florida?
Sorry, Equality Florida.
Okay. That's, definitely worth looking into. Absolutely. Stephen, what were you going to say?
On based on what Mike said regarding March of 2022, and then obviously Pride Month maybe next year, or we do one later in the year. The task force focuses on something quarterly. Doesn't have to be every week of every day. That's overkill, but maybe to make it continuous, just to to kind of get back on maybe once a quarter doing something, whether it's an education, a social event, or whatever. Is what we do. And I guess the second thing, which is another dialogue for the task force or for the community at large, I'm saying this to Jeff also, is the acronym, because society groups it as LGBTQIA. Well, that's a lot of different, even though it's not cis man, heterosexual, straight white guy. I don't, as a gay man, understand transgender. And so we're all grouped together under this umbrella, but there are so many differences within that acronym that education and continuation are very important for us to realize. I am comfortable in my own body, but other people aren't. So that's something that everybody has difference. And it's something, as we learn and educate, which was a good start by doing Matt's talk at the service a few weeks ago.
Thank you.
I had so many things I want to say. I'm afraid I'm going to lose track. So the stickers say, I believe, TBE celebrates Pride, and it doesn't say TBE is LGBTQ plus. It doesn't, right? So I think that we do celebrate Pride, and we should be proud of that. And I think that that's very inclusive. And so that's my thought on that. I want to comment on what Judy was saying before, because I also noticed that, Judy, and I'm really, really glad that you put a name to it, which is that the turnout for this was much smaller than I expected. And if we think about what Jeff was saying about reaching our community, and we think about all of the different things that Bethel does, and we do so many things and we do them really well, the Lunch and Learn is a small group. And the people who attend Friday night services is a bigger group, but also not encompassing everyone. And so I love what was mentioned by Mike and others about reaching the kids. I mean, I think having strong mentors, like having people to look up to and understanding that you can be Jewish and gay and proud of it, and that's hugely important to me. And that's something that Bethel gave to me, which I'm really, really thankful for. But sort of figuring out ways where we can be reaching larger groups and audiences and members, so that there are role models for members of our congregation of all ages to see and value and hear from, so that people feel like they have a vision, or they have a comfort in being who they are and showing up as their full selves.
Thank you, Tracy. Jeff?
I had made this comment a couple of weeks ago, but I know a number of people who are here this week didn't hear it. So I'm just going to repeat that I think part of that participation thing could be an understanding of what people are welcome or not welcome per se, but is that my place to be? I am not that. So like, for example, the first time I heard about the task force and even then saw the Pride Shabbat, I didn't know if the task force was more like what we're doing now with circles, because there's a place for that, right? I want to be around people who are having my same experiences, and that would actually not be a place for me. I'm not having those experiences, but as an ally, it is absolutely a place for me. So I don't know that message has gone out. This is not a criticism. This is just the reality. And I hear the word, what Summer said, gay and straight alliance, with that alliance part being, I think, very important for what is likely most, we never know who people are sometimes, but likely a heterosexual community, making sure that word alliance is part of something so that people know, oh, this is actually a place for me because I do care about equality and I want to have more education, opposed to, oh, I don't know that's not where I should be.
I just wanted to make a quick comment that I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that GSAs are now being referred to as gender and sexuality alliances instead of gay and straight alliances, just to broaden sort of, yeah, okay.
Okay,
Thank you
I
for the
have
education.
one more comment, Rabbi.
Go ahead, Judy.
And I believe everything that Mike said. I think there's a big generational thing involved here too. I have a daughter and 2 grandchildren in Vermont. And my granddaughter has come out as everything. It changed weekly. We didn't know the next word, but whatever. But I know the environment she's grown up in Vermont is so different, because that's Vermont, that they had friends that they're white people adopted 2 black boys who were biological brothers. And the little one was wearing dresses from the minute he could walk, and his parents encouraged it. That's Vermont. There was never a problem with, what's his name? Desmond Tutu was his name, Desi. But it's also generational. That's my feeling. Kids today in high schools in Broward and in Palm Beach County see things, I think many of them see things differently. Depends on the home too.
I mean, I would say as a person a generation or 2 younger than you, Judy, that it's different now than even when I was in high school.
Right.
And as someone who went to high school in the late 90s, I look back on it and it was dripping with latent and not so latent homophobia. That was a part of the culture back. I mean, as we mentioned last week when Robin and I were reflecting on the history of the movement, in the mid 90s is when you saw the conversation happening at the national level with policy questions like Don't Ask, Don't Tell in the US military and the Defense of Marriage Act being passed at that time. That was the culture. And that's the culture that I grew up in, right? Which doesn't mean it doesn't make it right. It just means that's where it was then. And I look back on even where my own mind was at the time and think, oh my God, what was I thinking? Right. But I was absorbing what was around me. And thank God our culture has continued to evolve towards the good over the last 20, 30 years. But there's still a lot of acculturation that needs to happen. And I think that's, for me, where a place like a synagogue can say, and we want to be a catalyst for that. We want to use what we have. We want to use the audiences that we can build. Sometimes they're optional, right? A conversation like today is of among an optional audience. But we also have plenty of times where we gather audiences that are not optional, right? And our schools are one of those, right? Where we can utilize, and this is where, Jeff, I think conversations that we're going to have along the way with you, you on the board and your colleagues on the board, is to say, if the synagogue wants to stand for something, it has to do it when it's convenient and when it's easy and we can make the safe space to make it happen, but also do it when it's a little bit less convenient. And so what does that mean for places like our preschool and our religious school? How are we, how are we making this a part of who we are, even in the spaces that aren't as obvious as, well, we're doing something for Pride this year, but what are we doing for parents and couples in our community and families in our community that have a variety of backgrounds and identities? And how do we make sure that A, this is a safe space for them, and B, we communicate that in a meaningful and effective way? I don't think we have the answers to that yet. I think we're beginning to ask ourselves that question. But I think that, you know, resources like Keshet can help us ask some questions of ourselves and do some of that self-reflection and think, wow, you know, part of it is saying, do you do this? Do you do that? But part of it is say, what do we, you know, helping us figure out what we want to do and where we want to be along that. And that's, I think, the work, you know, as I think about where the next year or the next years are going to take us, you know, I think we figured out what are some of the sort of obvious things that we can do, like have these kind of events, right? And I love the idea of putting a focus on creating a safe space for our students, whether they're gay or straight or whatever their sexuality, their gender might be, to have those conversations. But also, how do we build into who we are, not just the opt-in experiences, but that when you sign up to be a member, it's signaled to you that this is a place that's welcoming, because the membership forms have taken into consideration the variety of people's identities and those kinds of things as well. That takes some time. And there's going to be some friction there that maybe hasn't existed up to now. And we need the strength of the courage of our convictions to work through that. And the more people that we have those conversations with along the way, I think is what needs to be done. Other visions, other goals, other imaginings for what, you know, maybe not next programmatic year, but where do we want to go? What's the work we want to define for ourselves as this community? Meaning Bethel in its entirety. Mike.
I keep going back to having worked with kids, something I learned way back when as a counselor at camp, I think when I was 16, and it stayed with me. And you said the words earlier about being a part, not a part, but part of. Everybody, no matter who they are, what they are, how they identify, it's just a natural need to feel a part of something. And as camp counselors, camp directors, we worked on that. If there was a kid who was an outsider, for whatever reason, we went out of our way to make sure that all that kid needed was one or two friends to feel a part of. They needed to belong. And if we could somehow help to get to the point where every individual can feel that they belong, that I'm having trouble putting the right words to it, but that is where we need to be. Nobody should ever feel that they don't belong somewhere. They're a part of this humanity, of course, but on a smaller scale. This is where you belong. Everybody is a part of it, equally, with no distinction. That's the goal. I'm not exactly sure how to get there.
Right.
Rabbi, to that point, you know, there is an author named Todd Parr. He's a New York Times bestselling author. And, you know, even educating at the religious school, but also even at the ELC level, not giving the rainbow flag and saying everybody be gay, but he has different books about, you know, families and different things. And one of them is called The Family Book. And, you know, it talks about how some families have one mommy and one daddy. Some families have two things. And when you educate at that level, that can also help. And it's something that it's not throwing something out, but it's just showing you how everybody's different. My girls know they have a Ponca, an auntie, a Saida, a daddy, and their grandma's in heaven. So it doesn't say rainbows and this and that, but it talks about acceptance and how some families are big, some families are small, you know, and so on and so forth. And that could be brought in. I can send you some information on that.
Mm-hmm.
I just have to make one more comment, Rabbi.
Go ahead, Judy.
Florida is not Vermont. And that sums up a lot of the feelings. And we all know Florida's upside down. The north is the south, and the south of Florida is the north. And I'm sure Emily is very aware of the distinguished characteristics of our colleagues in northern Florida. You can take what you want from it, but it's a reality, in my opinion.
I'll just say to that, and this is not meant to be an aspersion at the Florida legislature. Theirs is only one governmental body that we are in the constituency of. There's work to be done at the county level of Palm Beach County. There's work to be done in the city of Boca Raton. If you live in the city, there are other places to do good work. As much as it's important to continue the fight in Tallahassee, but we've also seen this year wonderful things done at the county level and in concert with some of the cities. I mean, the Pride crosswalk installations that we saw installed in Boynton Beach and in Delray Beach, which were done in part by the Palm Beach County HRC. And we're like, there's work to be done there. There's what to gain in that way. So yes, Judy, yes, and we should change the venue if we want to do more work. If we feel like we can't get what we want right now there, we can get it. We can do other things along the way as well. And it usually takes colleagues like Emily from Tallahassee who are local to be in conversation to make that happen. I mean, it's all one big important conversation that I think is where we need to be. It is now 1 o'clock. And so this wraps up the official conversation. The thing that I will invite you to think about is everyone who is on this call cares about this. I wrote down a bunch of good ideas that we had for going forward. If you have others, things you'd like to see, and Mike, you articulated, I think, really, really well what the goal is, that everyone should feel like they have a place here. I think the next question is, okay, what does that look like tangibly, and how do we make that happen? Those are the questions that I'm sitting with. And so if you have responses to that, share them. Share them with each other, share them with Mike, share them with me, share them with Jeff, anyone and everyone who you're comfortable with. And we need to work together to continue to build. And I think that we are poised now to continue this effort going forward. The idea of it not just being once a month, the idea of doing things on a more regular basis, and the idea of building a culture that exists at every moment of the day here at the synagogue is where I would love to see this go. And so I just want to thank everyone who has been part of this effort along the way for the time you've put into it, and to thank you again for being a part of our community. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi, and thank you to everybody. Have a great day.